A tall case clock stands in the stately reception hall of an elegant house. It has been there for 100 years, marking the passage of time with its chimes. Brothers Patrick and John Landrigan, sons of Irish immigrants, put it there in their town home. They were adventurers, coming to the rough and tumble world that was the Texas Panhandle of the early 20th century to rebuild their fortunes. They had leased and then purchased about 92,000 acres of ranch land in Oldham County. John, Pat, and his wife Mary and their daughter Alice, and 2 nieces and a nephew, settled at the old Alamosa Creek headquarters. In 1911, they bought 4 lots in the growing town of Amarillo. Its population had increased from about 1,500 in 1900 to over 8,000 in 1910. And hired a Kansas City architectural firm to draw plans for a family home at what would become 1600 Polk. Construction began in 1913, and the house was occupied in the summer of 1914. The neoclassical mansion had over 15,000 square feet of floor space, with 20 rooms, 8 bathrooms, 7 fireplaces, and an Otis elevator to service the 4 levels. Though Mary Landrigan died during the early construction period, her daughter evidently took on lady of the house responsibilities, evidenced by the September 1914 Amarillo Daily News Society column account of a bridal shower for Fanny Fern Masterson given by Miss Alice Landrigan in her recently completed home. Probably the festivity of that party was punctuated by the chiming of the clock. Meanwhile, also in Amarillo, a daughter, Sybil, was born to Frank and Roxy Buckingham in October of 1908. The granddaughter of some of the first settlers in the region, young Sybil liked to hunt and fish, but also loved music and dance. As a child, she walked by the Landrigan mansion, perhaps on her way to school, and admired its beauty. And just maybe, if the windows and doors were open, she heard the chiming of that clock. By 1929, all members of the immediate Landrigan family were deceased. The mansion came on the market in 1940, 5 years after Sybil Buckingham had married Don D. Harrington, who had come to Texas as a landman for Marland Oil Company, and shortly began a highly successful career as an independent oil and gas producer. The Harringtons had planned to build a house on Hughes Street, but instead purchased the Landrigan estate in October, moved in, and entertained on New Year's Eve 1940. The clock must have chimed midnight to mark the beginning of a new life for the house and for the couple. Redecorating and refurbishing occurred over the next years, but there have been no structural changes since the construction of the house. The Harringtons lived at 1600 Polk throughout their marriage, though they traveled widely and had a winter home in Phoenix and a New York City apartment. Someone had written, "The Landrigan-Harrington house represents the symmetry of the 2 economies, cattle and oil, that have developed the Texas Panhandle, making the story of the house and its owners a vital one to tell." That story is beautifully illustrated everywhere within the mansion's walls. The lower-level clubroom is encircled by a plaster bas-relief frieze depicting scenes of the Landrigan Ranch, original to the house, but gilded by the Harringtons in their desire to brighten the interior. And in the adjoining foyer, a pair of cut crystal acorn finials the Harringtons purchased in France top the staircase newels and reflect the light that comes in. In room after room, Landrigan-installed light fixtures remain, including the one in the music room, white alabaster adorned with floral festoons and bow-knotted ribbons, suspended on unusual rectangular link chains. But there are also light sources added by the Harringtons. There's a crystal and silver chandelier intended for the home the Harringtons had planned to build before the Landrigan house became available, but now lighting the dining room, whose walls are covered in a scalamandra hand-woven silk stripe in shades that repeat colors refracted by the chandelier's prisms. Original to the house are leaded stained glass windows in each of the 4 bathrooms on the 2nd floor, while the leaded colored glass in the bay window at the head of the central staircase was replaced with clear glass in the same floral motif in the Harringtons' concerted effort to bring more light into the home. Beautiful woods embellish the house. The central stairway rising from the reception hall to the landing on the 2nd floor is mahogany, originally dark but bleached and refinished. The Harringtons added the flooring to the reception hall, 18th century French import white oak parquet de Versailles, hand-hewn and hand-pegged. The molding and trim in the guest room, where Clark Gable slept when he visited Amarillo, are rich bird's eye maple. Some of the furnishings still in the house today belonged to the Landrigans. Their Gothic Revival oak dining room suite, a sideboard, china cabinet, and table which, with its 5 leaves in place, could accommodate 15 chairs, were originally stained dark. The Harringtons had the wood bleached and the chair seats and back reupholstered in gold satin. The 4-poster bed in the daughter's bedroom was first slept in by Alice Landrigan and later by Sally Harrington. The American Empire mahogany bed, with scrolled head and footboard in Mr. Harrington's bedroom, the daybed sofa and desk in the upstairs sitting room, and the library bookcases, all were in place in 1914. The Harringtons added wonderful pieces of their own choosing. A pair of William III gilt wood high-back chairs circa 1690 from Kimbolton Castle, a Queen Anne Burrell walnut bureau bookcase built around 1710 with more than 20 concealed compartments, a satin wood marquetry center table from the late 18th century, and a Regency sofa table circa 1825 made of calamander, a hazel-brown black-striped rare wood indigenous to the Dutch East Indies. Despite their love of antiques, however, Don and Sybil Harrington were sophisticated citizens of their own century, and their home reveals their lifestyle, their friends, their diversions, their passions. Warmly inscribed photographs of the famous Ronald and Nancy Reagan, Clark Gable, Fred Astaire, Spencer Tracy, and many others can be seen. Masterpieces of Impressionist art, including Monet's Flowering Arches Giverny, painted in 1913, the year the Landrigans began construction of the house, have graced the walls. Photographs and paintings, as well as a chair upholstered in tapestry depicting shotgun shells and a dead duck, show Mr. Harrington's love of hunting and fishing. Mrs. Harrington's fascination with grand opera and her extraordinary generosity to the New York's Metropolitan Opera led to the Met naming the house auditorium after her, and memorabilia, engraved orchestral batons, stage bills for the premiere performances of the 17 operas she funded, her opera glasses and gloves are displayed. Pieces from Mrs. Harrington's exquisite wardrobe, including designs from Balenciaga, Bill Blass, Coco Chanel, Christian Dior, Oscar de la Renta, can be seen alongside the official letter naming Mrs. Harrington a member of the International Best Dressed List Hall of Fame. Though neither sought praise or publicity, Mr. and Mrs. Harrington were sharers of their good fortune. Ralph Waldo Emerson defined philanthropy as the wish to scatter joy and not pain around us. And the Harringtons exemplified that wish, supporting worthy projects in education, health and science, social services, the arts, spreading joy, easing pain both locally and across the country. In the club room are academic regalia commemorating Mrs. Harrington's honorary degrees from Texas Tech Medical School and from West Texas A&M University. The Amarillo Area Foundation, with the mission of improving the quality of life in the Texas Panhandle through philanthropic endeavors, owes its existence to Don Harrington. And Harrington House is open today because of Mrs. Harrington's fervent desire to preserve the beauty of the historic mansion to be enjoyed by the public for years to come. Privately and amply endowed, the home welcomes appreciative visitors on scheduled tours. Those visitors are sure to hear the chiming of the clock standing in the reception hall, the clock that's marked the passage of a century of the comings and goings of cowboys and oilmen, average folks and celebrities, a century of much laughter and undoubtedly some tears. The Centennial of the home built by the Landergans and preserved by the Harringtons is truly cause for celebration, and the clock will continue to count the seconds and minutes and hours of another century.